Hi, I'm Jim, and welcome to a 7-Spot video. Today we're doing a shed visit, and the car we've come to see is a beautiful ELVA Courier. The 50s and 60s were an exciting time for motorsport in the UK. Through club racing, we learned to and were introduced to manufacturers like Lotus and Lola and to ELVA. The first ELVA, the ELVA Courier, was first produced in 1958. And with us today, we have Ron Kubara.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, Ron.
Welcome to my shed.
Oh, yeah. Well, it felt odd to me to ask, to say welcome to a shed visit in your garage.
Yes.
Thanks for doing this with us.
Well, there she is.
Yeah.
44 years I've owned her.
Yeah. Well, typically, I always say these things that we do are never about me. So I'm going to turn it over to you. And typically, if it's all right with you, can you tell us about the car, how you came to have the car, and what it's meant to you?
Well, that question is this long.
Okay.
So where do I start? Well, I'll start with, I was about 19 years old, out of college, a little bit of cash, wanted to go vintage racing. Wanted to find an inexpensive way to do it while they could still carry on in school. And started to put feelers out, needed something 25 years old. I didn't want to go the typical route of an old MG or an old Triumph TR6 or TR4. So I started putting the words out, I'd like to find something unusual and affordable. Mm-hmm. And a friend of a friend of a friend said, hey, I know someone's got this ELVA Courier sitting in the garage for the last 10 years. Used to be raced out at Westwood, but it's sitting there without an engine and interior. So I went and I had a look at it, and it didn't look like this at all. It was blue. And I later learned out when I stripped all the paint off, it was yellow, it was green, it was white. It went through quite a few different colors. Mm-hmm. So I left it blue. I put the powertrain into a Ford Crossflow powertrain into it.
Oh, yeah.
And I went racing on Westwood for quite a few years, in the late 70s and the early 80s. Parked the car for a bit as mortgage became a priority. Mm-hmm. Raising a family, and mm-hmm. So she sat out in the garage here or out back in my driveway for quite a few years, and then in 2007 cash flow was pretty good and my wife gave me the okay to do a major rebuild. So right here in this garage, pretty much where that car sits right now, I stripped it right down to the chassis, took every bit off. Every piece of metal in the car, and there's not a lot because it is very thin fiberglass, every piece of metal was powder coated. And then I had to try to decide what am I going to put in for drivetrain. Mm-hmm. It was already set up for a Ford Crossflow, so a Lotus twin cam seemed like a really good choice. But you know, they're pretty pricey. And my wife said, "Well, just go on eBay and buy one." I said, "You don't just go on eBay and buy a Lotus Ford Crossflow." She goes to eBay UK, types up Lotus twin cam engine, and there's one for sale.
Fabulous.
Making that long story extremely short, I hit that push button at 6 seconds to the bid, and $3,200 later, that motor was sitting here in the garage.
Wow.
It was built to stage 2. The guy had put about 2 or 3 hours of practice on it and rolled his car. And then he said, don't touch it, drop it in. And that was 2007. And the engine is still as I got it. It has not been opened up.
Amazing. Now, which model ELVA Courier is this?
ELVA made Couriers, I believe 58 to 66, and then the 64, I believe, it's when they went bankrupt and they changed hands. Yeah. And Trojan took over, and Trojan made a different look in the car. They changed it quite a bit. So it still had the same lines, but there was a big change. Mm-hmm. But 58 to 63 are pretty much identical. Mm-hmm. Now, this one's a little bit of an unusual one. I found out later in joining the ELVA registry when they got the books from the former owner of the company, and I found out that this car was an ultralight, and it was ordered specifically for racing on Motorsport. That's the right-hand drive here in Canada. Yeah. Because of the wanting to be on the inside of the clockwise turning track out at Motorsport.
Yeah. And you say it's ultralight. Let's go for how much does this baby weigh?
Well, it's about 1,300 pounds, and as you'll see, there's not a lot of strength. If I pull that hard enough, I can rip that right off. So
wow.
Very thin glass to keep the weight down. I'll just pop the trunk lid. You can see it's just a shell of a coating. They put some metal bars in to give it some reinforcement, but otherwise there's not much to this car. It's to give it shape and to cut through the wind, which it does very, very nicely.
It certainly does, and what a beauty. Now, it's 1,300 pounds, and I think that one of the interesting things that I think you pointed this out to me before is if you're racing and you get a little bit sideways, you've got some extra.
Well, yeah, that is what's really quite unusual about this car. It's got a very strong lock-to-lock. I'll demonstrate that by turning this wheel, and as you'll see,
have a look down here.
Goes out a lot farther than the average car. So I get almost 45 degrees. So when I'm in some oversteer, I'm able to have quite a bit of oversteer and still keep the car pointed in the direction I need it to go.
Isn't that amazing?
And it is light on the bottom end, the back end, and it does have 170 horse, so it is pretty easy to light up the rear tires and get into an oversteer.
Right.
It doesn't really understeer. Those front wheels grab and bite, and it turns. So the front of the car will turn. The key is to keep the back of the car turning in the same direction as the front of the car.
Oh yeah.
And that can be a challenge in this one.
Yes, of course. What a beauty. And in terms of the rest of the drivetrain, you've got the Lotus twin cam.
Yeah, let's have a look at that.
Yeah.
So again, not a lot to this hood or anything that's holding it on. The hinges, it's very, very thin and very susceptible to cracks.
Yeah.
So this is a Lotus twin cam. It's a tall block. So it's a 1/4 inch taller than the standard crossflow block. And it's 17, I got to look up the specs here, 1775, I think, or 1725 cc's. Running two twin Webers, 40 DCOEs. Pushes a lot of fuel there. It's not, for a small little engine, a small little light car, it's not good on fuel economy, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And transmission-wise?
Transmission, there was a real issue with staying with a standard Ford 4-speed gearbox, because when you're driving on a highway, next thing you know, you're 4,000 RPM in fourth gear, and it's whining pretty good. So I did made it to a Ford T9 5-speed.
Okay, got it, yeah.
I had to figure that out. 2007, that there wasn't really there was no way to go find out how to do it, so I had to figure out how to do that myself. So I used the bell housing from the proper transmission to bolt to this engine. And then I made out of a block of wood, solid block of wood, I made a transition between the bell housing and the transmission. The input shaft was about 1 inch longer, so I had to have a spacer as well as a way to connect it. So I made the whole thing out of wood. Once I got it all working and all fit, I then took the wood to a machine shop and I said, build me an aluminum billet like this.
Yeah,
and
I'm glad to hear that you took it to a machine shop.
So that's how I got the 5-speed bolted onto it.
Yeah. And differential-wise, I was reading about ELVA, because I'm not a historian. I believe these had a live rear axle originally. Did they not?
No, it's a solid axle.
That's what I meant.
Okay, so it's very. Boy, I wish you can. I'd have to jack the car up. It's really weird under there.
Oh, is that right?
It's really, really strange under there. The differential itself is from an MG, probably MGA or MGB. And then they chopped and shortened it, but it's got the strangest suspension, and I don't know if you're going to be able to get the camera in there and see
it wouldn't have the MGA with the dampers, and
they shorten the width and they cut a lot, and it's very, very strange underneath the suspension. I've never seen another vehicle that's sprung the way this differential is. This axle, I should say.
Absolutely a beauty. I should say, and I'll just touch on this, that, I'm hoping you're the president of the Lotus Car Club of British Columbia.
I am.
And thank you for letting us come by and do this. I'm hopeful that this will be the start of doing a few more shed visits with more members. And I just talked to you earlier, we have a couple of people who are kind of interested in doing a shed visit, and I'm looking forward to that. But you have in your possession more toys, and we'll get back to that as well. what can I say? Thanks so much for letting us come by, and we'll make this short and sweet. But the other thing that we're planning to do, because we are doing an ELVA show, ELVA Courier show, is we've got a live stream planned with some other owners, all from the States. We've got a 1500 from California, and we've got two guys from back east, and they want to be in this live stream. So I'm hoping that you'll co-host the show with us.
Oh, absolutely. Look forward to it.
I'm looking forward to that too. So I'm going to say thanks so much, and we'll see you at 7 Spot. Ron has a Lotus Esprit, and he's agreed to tell us about it. And I'm not an expert on Esprit, but Ron is. And this is a very special car. Ron, tell us.
Well, I don't know if anyone's really an expert on Esprit. They ran for so many years. But I am an expert on this particular model.
Okay.
The Esprit was one of my dream cars. One of the things that I loved about it was the lines. I just absolutely liked the lines. Now, there was a big change in the lines between the early models and the late models. So it was the later model that I liked. They all had the wedge, but they went a little bit more rounder in the early 90s, starting with the SE. When I started to do my search looking for an Esprit, acceleration is really important to me. So I was starting to look towards a V8 Esprit. And then I was kind of scared off with the maintenance issues. Yeah. I got way too big of hands and I had way too big of a body to be able to get into that V8 and change the spark plugs. So it was suggested to me that I have a look at the S4 Sport. And I said, what's the S4 Sport? Well, that's when I found out about this model. So in 95, they built 367 of these. It was based on the race car version of this particular car. So it ran with 300 horsepower.
Wow.
So they pumped it up to every little bit of horsepower that you can get out of that little 4-cylinder and 2.2 liter until it was ready to blow up. Then they just backed off a wee bit.
And it just sings like a song.
It does.
Beautiful.
So it's lighter than the V8s.
Yeah.
The V8s put out 350 horsepower. This one's lighter than the V8s, but it's got the same acceleration through to 60 miles an hour.
Wow.
At that point, the V8s start to pull away, and they do have a little bit more guts to them. But off the line, this car is extremely quick. I have blue chipped it, so I've put it up to 350 horsepower, and that's cost me some rear tires. She does like to spin the tires.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I only got about 6,000 miles out of a set of rear tires, and so I'm a little more careful now because it's pretty expensive to do that. I picked this car up in 2011 after it won a Platinum Award at the USA Exotic Car Show in 2010.
Wow.
So I bought it sight unseen. It was in Florida. I had it checked and certified by Lotus. And with it winning a Platinum Award, I knew visually it was quite good. And it just came off a mechanical rebuild. And I was told, don't touch the car. So I literally had it shipped to the border here, just south of Vancouver. It came here by truck into Blaine. And that was the first time I saw it as they were unloading it off the truck. And I really haven't touched it since, other than polishing and tidying it up and cleaning it.
What a beauty. Now, it does have some interesting decals, and I think you pointed them out before. And they indicate that it is special.
Well, that little S is what I tell people. That little S at the back of the S4, that's kind of the big deal. So the S4, that's the series. So series 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yep.
This is a series 4. The little S at the back stands for Sport. And that basically meant they used a lot of Kevlar and they used a lot of carbon fiber to build the cockpit, keeping the weight down, and they used some big Bremco brakes on the vehicle.
Wow.
Really worked on the engine, an oversized turbo for really what that 2.2 liter should have.
Yeah.
And tweaked a few other things in the car and made a street version of the race car.
And needless to say, it's quick. Do you have any idea what your 0 to 60?
Well, out of the factory specs, the 0 to 60 is 4.3 for the factory, but with my blue chip and using my phone I have an accelerometer in my phone.
Yep.
I've clocked myself at 3.9.
Wow.
in a 0 to 60.
Be still my heart. I mean it. That's great.
The key is keeping the tires adhered to the road on the launch.
Yeah.
That's the tricky part.
Wow.
So let me show you the engine. It is a little bit unusual in the sense that it's got a whomping big intercooler on top of it. So of course, being mid-engine,
Yeah.
we've got the transaxle behind it. And this is the intercooler, and you can see they're proudly displayed that sports symbol. Now, a lot of them, the S4s had an intercooler on them, but it was combined with the oversized turbo, the intercooler. That's what pushed it up to 300 horse and chipping it, getting it to 350.
Wow. That's amazing, you know, that little engine, and look at it go.
And it knocks the head back. It definitely, when you're in the car, and the turbo spools up at about 3,900, and that's where it really takes off from 4,000 RPM to 7,000 RPM like this.
Wow.
And it's a kick in the back. It's the head. You can't help but have your head fly back into the back of the seat.
Wow, what a gorgeous car. Thank you so much. And with that, I guess we'll say again, thanks again, Ron.
You're welcome, Jim. Welcome to my garage, and nice to see you guys all here. Hopefully I'll get a chance to see your shed one day.